We've talked on the YouTube channel about Prototype and this franchise, past, present, and what we could see in the future. And I want to talk about where we stand with Prototype 3. This is a title that we've talked about on the YouTube channel. If you guys love Prototype and, love Prototype 3 type content, stay here with Zero TV, guys. We've been talking about Prototype 3 for a while now and what the future of this franchise could look like. A franchise that I really enjoyed with the first couple of games. The first one, of course, was my favorite. The second one I felt was a step in the wrong direction. But that being said, what could the future of this franchise look like? So let's get into it. In an article, guys, written by Ashley Bates of Cultured Ventures, will we ever see a new Prototype game? So games offer the chance to experience a true power trip as you become a super-powered being capable of anything and everything. There have been many games over the years that have focused on providing that kind of liberating experience, but there's only been one game that allows you to disguise yourself as an old woman, then sneak into a military base and roundhouse kick a soldier 50 feet across New York. I'm talking, of course, about Prototype. So Prototype was the work of Radical Entertainment, a now defunct Canadian development team that formed back in 1991. For the most part, Radical were the team to go to when it came to license releases. In their first active year, they managed to secure the license to develop a Terminator game for the NES, which goes to show how dedicated they were to creating licensed games. If you're still unsure of who Radical Entertainment even were, you'll probably be aware of a small game called The Simpsons Hit and Run. Radical Entertainment were responsible for the development of that game and a predecessor, Road Rage, which is arguably where Radical left their biggest cultural impact. So here's the thing, guys. In 2008, Vivendi were absorbed into Activision to form Activision Blizzard, with Radical at the time working on 3 projects: Crash, Mind Over Mutant, and at the time unannounced game, and Prototype. That game, unannounced game, was Scarface 2, as Vivendi president Phil O'Neill viewed the Scarface series as a key franchise for the company that could spawn a Scarface 2, 3, 4, and consecutive iterations of that product as being a really important component of what we're trying to do here. So let me just give you guys kind of an overview here. Radical Entertainment, in my mind, was one of those really aggressive companies that was trying to create projects around these IPs that were already established. Scarface, and I mean, just a number of titles, right? They had a lot of vision, and that's what I love about Radical Entertainment. I love this vision that they had to create their own IPs and to take IPs that already exist to create these awesome projects. We see this now with companies like IO Interactive. They've got Hitman that was created into a movie. You got now Project 007 that's being worked on. That, of course, from the James Bond universe. I love seeing companies that are thinking outside of the box. So due to the corporate restructuring, Scarface 2 was canceled while the development of Prototype and Crash remained unaffected. However, Activision gutting Radical arbitrarily would come back to haunt Radical later on. But we're getting ahead of ourselves here. After launching Mind Over Mutant in 2008, Radical sunk their resources in the release of Prototype in 2009. So Prototype would prove to be a commercial success, selling over 2 million copies in over a year before being released digitally on the PS3 and Xbox 360. Critically, Prototype did okay, with reviews mostly being positive about the game's storyline and gameplay abilities. Prototype was a bit ropey, though, and drew criticism for its controls and also for the drab and dreary visuals. So for me, though, the first Prototype was incredible. I compared Prototype a lot to Infamous. Infamous was exclusively on the PlayStation. I thought Infamous was a lot of fun as well, but Prototype kind of took some of those concepts and really ran with it. Those were the 2 titles, in my opinion, that kind of were almost vying for control of this, superhuman type of style and genre in gaming at the time. And Prototype, I thought, was leaps and bounds ahead of Infamous. I just loved Alex Mercer as a character, kind of like an Assassin's Creed type character with superhuman ability. And I love that concept, and I thought that they would run with it even further. But then, of course, came the second title. One particular critic who knows the similarities between the 2 games was noted internet firebrand Yahtzee, who compared the 2 games against each other in his Zero Punctuation series. He's talking about, guys, Sucker Punch versus Radical, the ones, of course, who made none other than Infamous, and Radical making Prototype. Like I just had stated, those 2 were very kind of similar. Ultimately, there wasn't a solid winner, so he challenged both Radical and Sucker Punch to create a unique piece of art with their main character wearing women's underwear. That certainly was a thing that happened. And so after the cancellation of Scarface 2 and the release a prototype, Radical would attempt to get multiple projects off the ground. Andrew Hume spoke to Ars Technica in 2011 to confirm that the Scarface sequel was canceled by Activision and that he spent a year working on an unannounced game that would ultimately be canceled too. These issues would lead to Hume leaving the company to form MinMax Games. So here's the deal. I think Radical had so many great ideas, but they almost were they needed to kind of start a little bit smaller, right? Kind of one project at a time where they had their hands in so much. I think that's really what met the demise of this company as a whole. So the prototype sequel was first revealed at the Spike VGAs in 2010, with Radical working on the game heavily up until its release in April of 2012. Prototype 2 allows new protagonist James Heller, which I think was the biggest mistake that they could have possibly made. They moved on from, Alex Mercer way too soon. I think that Alex Mercer should have had another game or two. I think that they should have made a trilogy around Alex Mercer, and then they could have moved on to James Heller, kind of like passing the torch from one character to the next. They moved on way too soon, and I think that really is where they really met the demise of Prototype, because it was almost like, I remember when the second prototype was announced and you see the cover and it's not Alex Mercer, it's James Heller, and you're looking at it like, why are they moving in this direction already? Like, they had it so good with the first game. Why are they already moving on to another character? And it kind of lost me. Even though I played the title, it lost me a little bit that they were already moving on. So this James Heller would be infected with the Blacklight virus by Alex Mercer and become another superpowered badass. The story would bring the two into conflict with each other, with the majority of the game's promotion focused on the fact you'll be fighting against the guy you once played as, which I think was a huge mistake. Prototype 2 received similar critical reception to the original game, along with the endorsement of community creator Dan Harmon. If that means anything, commercially, Prototype 2 would go on to become the best-selling game for the month of April 2012, would experience continued success the following month. Unfortunately, that wouldn't be enough. Because they sank so many resources into it, Activision actually deemed it a failure. Despite being one of the most successful games in the entirety of 2012, Activision would deem Prototype 2 to be a failure. Yes, even though it was the most successful game in the month it launched, Activision stated the following in a press comment to IGN. Although we made a substantial investment in the Prototype IP, it did not find a broad commercial audience. That same statement came as Activision announced that they were shuttering Radical for good. This was nearly a decade ago, and yet Activision's strategies regarding their own studio seemingly hasn't changed. A few weeks ago, at the time of writing, it was revealed that Toys for Bob developers of Spyro, Reignite, and Crash 4 would become yet another Call of Duty support studio. Activision has gone so all in on Call of Duty, which I think is great, right? Call of Duty is one of the big three for me. I mean, it's one of the greatest games ever made. So I think that bringing your resources together to focus on Call of Duty because it's such a juggernaut makes a lot of sense from a financial perspective. But you're also leaving so much off the table from a creative perspective, that being, Prototype and all these other titles out there that I think need continuations. So at the very least, I would love to see Activision maybe sell some of these IPs, right? To free up some, get some more cash flow and such. It'd be great to see them sell, the Prototype IP. So the reason why Prototype 2 failed in April 2012 is because pretty much all games failed at that time. NPD published statistics for game sales and industry finances in that month, finding that game sales had fallen 42% year over year. NPD's analyst Anita Frazier theorized that the reason for drop could have been due to a lighter release schedule. Last April, the top 7 titles outsold the top selling title this year, and simply stated there were notably fewer new market introductions. I think it's as simple as that, because when we were seeing a compelling content come into the market, the games are still selling as well as ever. We just saw a lot less this April as compared to last. So this leads us to the question: will we see a new Prototype title? Where we kind of stand here with this. I'd like to see one. Despite aging like milk that's been sat in your living room window for 6 years, the original Prototype has a soft spot in my heart purely due to the level of chaos you could conjure. Assuming the identity of random civilians to smack the crap out of monsters, or using the Patsy move to declare soldiers as monsters so that others turn on them, was always entertaining to Teenage Ash. As for whether or not we'll ever see a sequel, I wouldn't bet on it. We did see Prototype 1 and 2 remastered for PS4 and Xbox One, but reception to that release was somewhat frosty, largely because there are warts in all parts of the original games with very little in the way of improvements. If you were expecting lovely new textures and massive frame rate improvements, you'd be mistaken. Activision Blizzard have proved that they're willing to raid their back catalogs in search of the next big hits, with remasters and remakes for the likes of Crash, Spyro, Call of Duty, and the upcoming Diablo 2. But the fact remains that Activision never really held much stock or faith in the Prototype brand. They killed it and its developers off once before and sacrificed the Call of Duty gods, so they're not going to go back again, not for Prototype. Now, you can never say never, so I disagree in this article with that. You can never say never. Dead Space is a perfect example. We thought that Dead Space was potentially dead forever. I had stated that, look, we got to echo this thing into existence. Then I made a video talking about how I was concerned about Dead Space and why I was feeling like, man, maybe Dead Space isn't going to come back. Now with EA Play and, the rumblings of a new Dead Space title ramping up, it's like anything's possible. So could we get a Prototype 3? Absolutely, guys. Look, we as a community, we have to voice our opinion. We have to voice Prototype 3 into existence or a Prototype reboot into existence. It's not just going to happen. Our voices really speak a lot more than you would think to these developers. A lot of us voicing our opinion about Dead Space, EA's looking at it like, well, Jedi Fallen Order did pretty good for them. And, that's just a single-player story. And, Star Wars Squadrons did well. And all these different, titles that they're working on, some of them are doing well. And so why not bring back Dead Space? It made a lot of sense to at least bring it back, even if it's like, remastering and things of that nature. I'd love to see a continuation of Prototype 3. So don't give up the faith. It really comes down to us voicing our opinion to Activision Blizzard. So then again, no one says that Activision have to be the ones to publish a new game. They currently own the rights to the IP now, but what's to stop some enterprising publishers from making Activision an offer for the new game? If anyone wants to do it, it'd probably be THQ Nordic, who have made a habit of hovering up all the game franchises in the world and creating ports, remasters, and even full-blown remakes. They did it for Destroy All Humans. They're doing it for Time Splinters. They could theoretically do it for Prototype. Still, that's just some speculation on what could happen, and the only way it ever become a reality is if people ask for it. Like I said, guys, personally, a third Prototype leveraging the power of modern PCs, the PS5 and Xbox Series XS, could be a world beater, but the demand has to be there for it to happen. So, that being said, guys, what do I think? Well, we as a community have to voice our opinion. We have to echo Prototype 3 into existence, and, that being whether it's on social media, through Twitter, through Facebook, wherever it is, voicing our opinion to Activision Blizzard. We definitely can get this thing made. Dead Space, there's a chance that it's going to be made, guys. Can Prototype be kind of similar? Absolutely. We just have to voice our opinion, make these things happen. But what do you guys think in the comment section down below? What do you think about Prototype? Do you think we should get a Prototype 3? Do you think it should stay in a limbo state or a state of no return? Do you want to see it come back? And what would it take for it to come back? Let me know in the comment section down below. And for more Prototype 3 content and videos, stay here with Zero TV.